Joanne Reedus.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Joanne, and I'm so happy to be here this afternoon on River Time in our beautiful Wimberley Valley. And I'm here with a special guest, David Martin. He's David N. Martin, and I understand that's Nicholas.
That's correct.
That's correct. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And we're here to have a conversation today about inclusivity and diversity and social movements that have very lengthy timelines in our culture. And we're going to start off talking about the Wimberley Pride Parade, which is coming up this Saturday, and we'll get into the detail about that. But first, I want to know where you were born with your accent, because it's not from Wimberley.
Yes, as you can tell, I'm not originally from around here. So, originally I'm from London in the UK, but I've actually now been living here in the United States for nearly 20 years. I moved over here in May of 2000. I've actually been living in the Wimberley area, though, only since, I think, January 2018 was when we moved into our house. So,
well, welcome.
Fairly new around here. But I started out in Denver, Colorado in May of 2000, and then moved to just outside of Cincinnati. And then my husband and I, we moved here in January 2018.
How'd you find Wimberley?
My husband took a position at Texas State.
Oh, okay.
So he is the program director of the doctoral program in school improvement.
Lovely.
That's why we ended up here.
And there you found Wimberley.
Yep.
So what I'm interested in is knowing a little bit about your personal history with this subject called inclusivity. Because I know, just thinking back and looking through history, our Native American culture we treated them not well. We did not include them in a inclusive way. And then, people of color, and it just goes down the line into how we have sort of sidelined different cultures and peoples.
Sure. Well, and I think that's also something that the human race as a species is I hate to say it, pretty good at.
Yes, we are.
And I can also say that as an Englishman, my country doesn't have a particularly good track record in that either. When you look at the British Empire, we have a pretty big track record of separating and dividing and conquering in that sense too. So my interest in that, if you can call it an interest, I guess, is as a minority in the fact that I'm a gay man myself, so I have experienced discrimination there. But yes, I think you're right. There's always been this sort of systemic need to divide and separate and to move people into different areas, whether that be based on race, on gender, on sexuality, on religion. We see it today on politics as well. There's very much this separation based upon that.
Definitely.
The human race always wants to divide and categorize and separate people and not allow them to integrate in different ways. Or if they do allow integration, it's on the dominant person's terms.
Indeed.
And suppressing other areas.
Indeed. So when did you decide to start this project called the Wimberley Pride March and Parade?
Well, I guess that all started based upon a little thread on the Wimberley Community Forum on Facebook back last, I think, March or April, when I hadn't been here for very long, and I thought, Wimberley seems like a really, really good place to have a Pride March. And I posted that message out there, and it attracted an awful lot of attention, some good, some bad, but there was a tremendous amount of dialogue around it. And that was the genesis of the idea, and started to talk to some other local people. There was a tremendous amount of positive support, and that's what really started to move it forward in terms of actually beginning the process. So the Wimberley Pride Committee was brought together probably towards the end of last year, and that's when we started to meet with the city administrators, the constable's office, and to set the wheels in motion. So it's taken us a while to actually get to this place, but I can't believe that it's actually going to be happening this Saturday.
Very exciting. I think, go ahead.
When I first started seeing these conversations happening last year, I was like, wait a minute, that's not happening already in Wimberley. I was really surprised.
A number of people said that.
Welcome.
Yeah. However, I do remember the last 2 4th of July parades. There have been representation from your community, the bigger, larger community, that has been well received.
Yes.
I thought that was a hopeful sign.
Absolutely. And that also shows the fact that these things often build upon other things as well. And nobody ever gets wherever they need to go without standing on the shoulders or holding the hands of the people before. So I'm very grateful to the people who laid those paths in former 4th of July parades and so on to allow us to be where we are now, because we wouldn't be here without that and without that dialogue having been started.
And the recognition that we're even Xing people out of our community.
Absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm. So let's do a little timeline framework of how old were you when you first began to be sort of active in any social movement or any way?
Well, gosh, I guess I've always been somewhat active in politics. As a younger gay man in my late teens, early 20s, I was involved with a local gay group in the town that I grew up in, and I think I was starting to be involved with organizing some of their shows and their fundraisers and things by the age of about 18 or 19. So there was always a desire to want to be involved in those kinds of things. I was involved in a youth group at a young age. So there's always been that desire to be involved in things. Mm-hmm. And that's continued through most of my jobs and my career. I'm a visual artist, but also an educator as well. So there's been that aspect of being involved with people, and I won't necessarily say leading, but guiding and organizing and being involved in something with momentum. That's always been there.
So you have degrees in the arts, right? What are your...
I do. I have a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Applied Photography, a Master of Fine Arts in Visual Arts with an emphasis in photography, and also a Master's of Art in Art History, Visual Politics, and Visual Culture as well.
Oh, so, awesome.
Lots of things.
Is there someone who's going to be archiving or photographing or catching this event?
We will be having it photographed. And we're going to be posting details about how you can tag all your photographs for the event and have those stored as well. So, yes.
Oh, that'll make
there will be lots of documentation of this. It's going to be a momentous thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, if we look back in time, do you want to start just giving a little history about the movement and how it started, maybe with Harvey Milk or wherever you want to jump in?
Sure. Actually, what would be useful would be to talk a little bit more about the genesis of Pride itself, perhaps.
Okay.
And for that, it's because it's actually the 50th anniversary of really when Pride started. So if we were to go back to New York City in 1969, to the Stonewall Inn, which was really the beginning of everything. So the Stonewall Inn, which still exists today, so next time you're in New York, if you're interested in a little bit of walking history, you can go down and actually visit it. The Stonewall Inn was a bar that was actually a mafia-run bar by the Genovese family. But it didn't have a liquor license, a bar without a liquor license. So, I know so it was a bar and owned by the mafia family, and so they would pay the police money so that it didn't allegedly get raided all the time or get shut down. And this was a bar that was frequented by the LGBTQ community. Men, women, trans people, drag queens, all kinds of people. It was hugely popular. It was one of a number of different bars in that particular area. And on the 28th of June in 1969, the police did one of their raids on the Stonewall Bar. So they weren't supposed to raid it all the time because of the protection money, but they did do on and off raids there. But this particular time, the police did not call the owners in advance to say, we're going to come down and raid it. So they just showed up. And the patrons decided that they had had enough being raided by the police, because it wasn't always just about confiscating liquor and stuff like that. The police would come in and they would turn all the lights on, and they would basically arrest any man who was either in drag or who was wearing women's clothes or who was trans. There were laws on the books in New York City that if you were a woman, you had to be wearing at least 3 items of feminine clothing.
Really?
And if you were not wearing 3 items of identifiable feminine clothing, you could be arrested. And this was specifically targeted at lesbians.
Goodness.
And that night, the patrons decided that they had had enough because all of the bars were being consistently raided and targeted for this. And so that signaled the start of the Stonewall riots. And there were 2 nights of rioting that took place, basically against the police. Bottles were thrown, punches were thrown. I'm sure a few wigs were trampled and handbags were hurled and all kinds of stuff. But that's really the genesis of where Pride started. Up until then, the movement had been mostly a sort of a very passive movement with things like the Mattachine Society and so on. But it changed at that point. People had decided, okay, we've had enough. You can't continuously come down here and raid our bars, line us up, turn the lights on and arrest us and take us off to jail. So the first Pride March actually took place the following year on the 28th of June, 1970. It was in New York. There was a concurrent march in Chicago and Los Angeles, I believe, at the same time. And that marks the birth of modern Pride. And then subsequent years, they took place